Europe was a major power in this old world, which the Native Americans left 25,000 years ago, before the 15th century was a dominant force. The Roman Empire of Europe was the world's only superpower for hundreds of years and ruled over many parts of Asia. But gradually the Roman Empire weakened, and eventually the last vestige of the Byzantine Empire remained. It was no more an empire, or it was a nominal empire. Constantinople was just a city, still called an empire, in memory of the old times, and surrounded by mighty walls. Then it happened that in 1453, the last vestige of the Roman Empire was destroyed by the Turks. The young Turk Sultan Muhammad the Conqueror conquered Constantinople and ended the Roman Empire forever. The name of the city was also changed from Constantinople to Istanbul. In the 15th century, the power of Europe had died, and now there was mourning left. Because Constantinople was not only an important military base, but also a holy city in Europe. It was the center of Orthodox Christianity. It was settled by Constantine, the first Christian emperor of the Roman Empire. Constantine also had a magnificent church built here, Hagia Sophia. Therefore, Christians from all over Europe had a special devotion to this city. But apart from devotion, this city had another significance. Because this city was a lifeline of trade from Asia and especially China to Europe. From the markets of Central Asia, Chinese silk, spices, precious stones, gold, silver, and other goods used to come to Europe through this route. Now this route was closed with Constantinople falling into the hands of the Turks. Due to this defeat, the people of Europe were suffering from an agony both economically and spiritually. Economically, as trade routes were closed, employment opportunities in Europe were greatly reduced. People started to become poor to such an extent that food and drink became scarce. People forced by hunger threw their children on garbage heaps. Farmers started committing suicide, or they were forced to live a servile life by taking loans on interest. Then it also happened that hungry naked people came to loot to save their lives. Within a short period of time, crime had increased to such an extent that pedestrians in the streets of Europe looked up to the sky instead of the ground. The reason was that criminals hiding in houses used to crush the heads of pedestrians by throwing stones from windows, and then stole whatever they could from the clothes of the dead bodies. So it was good to raise his head and take care of him. Wealthy people had hired guards, but ordinary people were dying indiscriminately. The government guards were also helpless in this situation. It was the economic disaster of Europe that was brought upon Europe by the capture of Constantinople and the closure of trade routes. The second disaster was spiritual. The religious Christians of Europe were understanding that Europe, which was the cradle of Christianity, was being taken over by Muslims one by one. So now, these people thought that this was a difficult time for Christianity. Christian territories are shrinking day by day and shrinking geographically. They felt that if this continued, Christianity itself would end or lose its power. So these were the reasons on the basis of which the Europeans, their religious and commercial class, were looking for a new world. But where could they find such a world? They did not know that just 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers to their west, there is a world whose area is almost equal to the area of this entire world, and which is also rich in natural resources, gold, silver, oil, etc. They only knew of the world in which one could travel eastwards to reach China and Japan. These two countries, that is China and Japan, were being mentioned in every household in Europe these days. Why? That is because Marco Polo's travelogue had now reached everywhere in Europe. Marco Polo wrote Cathay for China and Cipango for Japan. About Japan, he wrote that the roofs of the royal palace are made of gold. The doors and windows are also decorated with gold, and often the floors of the rooms are covered with gold plates 2 inches thick. In this way, he exaggerated the stories of the wealth of China and its Mongol ruler Kublai Khan. Although Marco Polo's travelogue was written at least 150 years ago, Marco Polo's travelogue was the only ray of hope for the poor Europeans in these dire circumstances. So this travelogue of Marco Polo was inspiring the European youth to somehow reach China and Japan, find a way, and try to get the riches that Marco Polo had peppered his stories with. But the problem was that the land route was now blocked by the Turks. Another route was across the Mediterranean Sea through Egypt. This route too, as you can see in the map, was occupied by the Muslim Empire of the Mamluks. Also, throughout the Mediterranean Sea, from Morocco to Egypt, there were small and large Islamic states that attacked European merchant ships. Europe could find no safe passage from there either. Thus, Europe was in a way under the siege of Muslims. Another route discovered by explorers like Bartolomeo Diaz was to travel around Africa to Asia. But this way was very long. Even a one-way route could be completed in months. Now the Europeans did not understand which route to take to reach Asia, which would be in their interest, and also short, so that they could reach Asia through this route to trade and end their poverty. In the midst of this desperation, a little-known Italian sailor came forward. He claimed to know the shortest route to China and Japan in Asia. It was, in his opinion, a route that was quite straight, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And no big country could pose a threat to them in this way. It was a huge claim that could change the fortunes of Europeans. The claimant was the young Christopher Columbus. How did he discover it? You will know it in the next episode.